Hello, we are back in my van for another video because it's quiet in here. This video was a suggestion by a viewer, and it was kind of the pros and cons of being a stay-at-home mom with some side hustles. And I really liked this idea, especially in terms of babysitting. And so I'm going to kind of just share a little bit of my journey with side hustles and whatnot. Ideally, if I could go back and keep a specific side hustle that worked for our schedule, our home, something I really enjoyed doing, it would be my sewing business that I began in my early teens. And that business pretty much catered to a specific group, namely Christian families that were looking for some modest dresses for their girls. And it was a very prairie style look. I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed kind of that creative side of it. And specifically for children, they don't need as tailored a dress as an adult would. It was, the hours were more flexible. The creativity was kind of more my side of things. And while the money was not a whole lot, I think we worked it out to sometimes you could earn like 50 cents an hour, sometimes it was $2 an hour. By the time you took apart shipping costs and all of this other stuff, material cost, website cost, you're not making a whole lot. 20 years ago, that really wasn't as much of an issue as it would be today if I was to try and do that. That was probably my favorite side hustle. Again, you got the creativity aspect of it. I could kind of set my own hours. And downside to that is, of course, it doesn't make a whole lot of money. As much as people would think, I was not... There's some people that know how to market themselves very well and can make a good living off of that. I wasn't necessarily one of those. Because at the same time, when you're in a specific market, like what I was with Christian moms and whatnot, it doesn't necessarily mean that they had a lot of extra money to spend. They just had an aspect that they wanted for their family. The downside of that was there was a lot of a mess. A lot of times you had kind of a mess, and I did not have a sewing room. My dining room table has pretty much always been my sewing area. So you set everything up, you've got a little bit of time, and then you got to take it all down and put it away, and then put it in such a way that it's easy to get to, and then bring it all back up. And there was a lot of seasons where I would have projects cluttering the couch, cluttering any spare space I could, because I didn't want to fully put it away and then have to fully take it out. It was just a lot of extra steps and mess. And that was a con side of it. And it was very stressful, especially on my husband, that really needs a tidy home for him to function. And to be honest, it was getting to me too. And when I got married and continued that aspect of it, I could utilize things like nap time to work on these things. As, kids got older and nap times kind of faded away, I didn't have as much time to do that, because then we had different things we were doing during nap time that we were utilizing. Mom wasn't as needed in the younger ones, but I could then help transfer that time for the older ones. So that was probably like my favorite side hustle, and that was, again, one that I could just do at home and work to the best of my abilities. When I got married, and actually a little bit before I got married, it was when I kind of transitioned from the typical teenage babysitting years to house cleaning. And the thing with house cleaning is that you have to get to your client's home, and I was heavily relying on people driving me. I did not get my license until after my oldest was born due to complications with my birth certificate, my social security, and the Patriot Act of 2001. So because of all of that, I could not get my license. It literally took an act of Congress to get married. And so I did not have my license. And then I didn't have opportunities to practice driving. My husband had a stick vehicle, meaning his truck is that we got married in. He still has that truck. It was a stick shift, a manual. And learning is fine, but I don't know, something, but I leg cramp very easily, especially on a stick. And it was really bad in our, when I was first learning how to do that. I've kind of learned how to shift in such a way, pun not intended, to how to sit in order for it not to pop the clutch a lot. But my husband also worked, which meant I did not get to learn as easily on that. So there was just a lot of time. I don't want to go into a full 20 minutes of talking about this. But anyway, there was just a lot of things that played into it. So I was dependent on being able to walk where I needed to clean, or have a ride to take me where to clean. And it was easier to do that in our early years of marriage because I did not have a lot to do at home. It was a very boring time of my life. There was only so much I could do in the house. I did not have a job, and I started house cleaning just to kind of keep myself busy. So in aspect of that then, I really don't know if I have cons other than I did not have a vehicle. But that has continued on throughout our marriage, and anytime I need just a little bit extra, house cleaning is something that I can work with. About 3 years before we got married, about 3 years before we moved out to Indiana, I started picking up house cleaning again. And once again, it consisted of having to drive myself there, so I had to look into costs for gas. This is California, and we were up into the $4 at this point. We thought we would hit $5 several times. Again, this would be 6 years ago. We thought we were going to hit $5 several times then. So there's that cost. My kids were too young to, my oldest were too young to babysit all of the kids. So I had to see if my sister could be there and watch them, or I would have to take them to my mom's house to watch them in order to clean. And I had one client that paid me very well, and it was absolutely worth it to pay someone to watch my kids if needed, because it would cover the cost of paying them adequately and me working. So that was one client. The other 2 clients I had, I was paid $12.50 an hour. And typically I would have like a 3-hour session. So that is about $37.50 for 3 hours of house cleaning. If I was to pay for 3 hours of babysitting, that takes it down to about $20 for 3 hours of cleaning. And then it just wasn't always worth it to do that. So again, I learned to kind of work in ways that, okay, those 2 $37.50 clients I would try to do on days that my husband was home. Couldn't always make that happen. Couldn't always do a Saturday. Saturdays were the days when my husband was home. Couldn't always do that, unfortunately, just because of their scheduling conflicts. And so it would get to a point where I would have to kind of figure out, okay, I cannot pay you the $15, but can I buy you a Starbucks for doing this? And that would kind of help cover, kind of say, hey, I really recognize that I could ask you as my sister to do this, but I'm doing that on top of, I know that your time is valuable and I need somebody here, can I buy you a Starbucks coffee? And that was $5 that I was putting out instead of 15, and then it helped work the cost better. And then in that when you're cleaning other houses, you have to work with their schedules. It isn't always possible to work with your own, as I just illustrated. So that is definitely a con. It is extra money that you can add into where you can fit it, if at all possible. And then kind of build your structure around that, and then it's just a little bit of money here and there that was really, really helpful and very a big help to our family, especially the one client that paid me very well. They were a weekly client, whereas these other two were bi-monthly, which means every other week. So what I would do is I would just rotate them as to just having one client every other week. So those were probably the best ones that I can really illustrate for you. There's definitely other things that I have done, but it's not always possible, and it's definitely one of those things that you have to have an in with to do. For example, I would make meals for an elderly couple. They had a very specific diet they could eat, and they would pay me to basically cook that meal for them every day, with extras that they could use as leftovers. And that's not something you can really just advertise for, because you have to have a clean kitchen. You have to be certified if you're not working with somebody that is not family or a friend. This worked because of my situation and where I was. That did have cons to it. The original idea behind that was that I would just cook a little bit more of what we were doing, because we were trying to be gluten-free, and she had to be gluten-free, she had to be soy-free. I could easily adapt that, not a problem. Those two were specifics. Onions were things that she thought she was allergic to. I asked why she thought she was allergic to. She's like, well, every time I cut them, they just made me cry. I was like, okay. She was very dead serious. Okay. Sweetest little old lady. But, so I could easily just kind of add those in after I pulled her food out to any meal with the onions. That wouldn't have been a problem. So that was the original idea. As we got more into it, she really, I think, had just gotten old enough that she could not eat normally. I think people forget that your throat is a muscle, and if it's not exercised, it does shrink. And for her, she just wanted things that were easy to eat, like soups, all the time. And so when I had done things like meatloaf, or things that were still softer, not like a steak and corn type of thing, she had difficulty working those and swallowing those, even the meatloaf and whatnot, even things with like noodles and certain textures. And it just, her throat had just unfortunately just started getting smaller and smaller. So what was originally, we're just going to make a little bit extra for us, turned into making completely separate meals, and that just takes a little bit extra time. It had to be done at 4 o'clock. My husband doesn't even get home till 6 o'clock. So I had to start meals in the middle of a homeschool day, because I had also at that time a student that I was homeschooling in the afternoon. So that time period was very difficult, because I was doing so much. I was taking kids to different activities that they had. I had my boys in jiu-jitsu and my girls were in ballet. We had a homeschool co-op we were doing. I was cooking food for this elderly couple. I was homeschooling my kids as well as 2 additional kids. I was just kind of going and going and going until the point that when I started handing off all these jobs, my body did collapse and I ended up really sick with pneumonia. So there's a huge con to that. Yes, I could balance all of that out, but there was a higher cost to that, and that was my health. And it took, I mean, some of you that have been around this channel for a long time, you remember, like, even 6 weeks after that, I was getting so tired just making a simple video. It was extremely exhausting. So that's definitely something to consider when you're adding all of this in on your plate, what mental and physical capacity you have. And now the big elephant in the room, babysitting. It seems easier to take on extra children when you're already home and are doing your day-to-day life. It seems, well, what's one more in the pot kind of aspect. And I have always been upfront with my families that this is the way that I live, and the kids will be expected to live alongside us. And so that means my rules and whatnot. But I will also treat your children as if they're my own. And that means both ways. I will love them like they are my own, but I will also expect of them what I expect of my own children. And to a certain extent, you can do that. But as I was learning, a lot of my children come from broken homes. And you have children that have rules at one parent, and then a second set of rules at a different parent, and then a third set of rules at grandma and grandpa's house, and then you have the rules at school, and then you come home to the fifth home, my home, and there's even different rules there. And I was watching 2 of the kids that I had in particular just really, really struggle. And while I didn't give up my principles, I did allow things that my kids knew that they would not be allowed. And it was a very difficult, and it still is to a certain extent, a difficult thing for them to understand. Like, Mom, all we have is to eat in front of us, and why does he have choices or she have choices? And I would explain, it's like, this is something they can control, where the rest of their life is so out of control. And it's not such a big thing for me as much as maybe this over here. And when I let go of trying to control, hey, you will eat what is in front of you and you will be grateful for it, like I do with my children, when I let go of that, some of the other issues we were having kind of not disappeared, but definitely dwindled down. And it was because there was just so much conflict in these little children's lives who are 4, 5, 6 even. And there's just so much for them going on. And you're getting pulled into that, whether you want to or not. You are getting pulled into the family drama where maybe Dad was supposed to pick up the kid and he decided he didn't want to today. He's mad at Mom for something, and so now kid is not picked up when he said he was going to be. I'm contacting Mom saying kid was not picked up. They're fine. I'm just calling to see what's going on, and then there's conflict there going on. A lot of times you end up being sick a lot more because guess what? The kid is sick. It's home from school. Mom still has to go to work because that is our society now. Our society does not give grace for the fact that kids get sick often and they can lose their job. So they will bring the kid and you're kind of stuck with it. There isn't a whole lot that it's just one of those, yes, I can say no, but it's just one of those things that you're kind of opening your house to that, especially since, okay, he was over yesterday, he's sick today. We're already exposed at that point. So it's going to sound like I have a lot more cons when I talk about things with babysitting. And it's just a hard thing that you just want to understand what you're getting into. My time was never my own, really. Even though I have maybe a half hour set aside that I had to go pick up one kid from school every day, it was in the middle of a day, and it just disrupted the flow that we were having, that it was really difficult to kind of pick back up and pick back into a good rhythm. And that was kind of our biggest struggle this past year. Just kind of keeping a good rhythm, keeping a good flow going, especially because the beauty of homeschooling is you can start when it works well for you and your family and all of that. But if I have to quit and go do something, then that's disruptive. And then I'm picking up a kid from school who has been in classroom for 4 hours, who was up earlier than he really needed, who didn't get to bed late. The last thing he wants to do is sit inside with all of us doing schoolwork together. And so there's a transition there. And kids today, I am learning, do not know how to entertain themselves. And while I did work on that with these kids that I'm babysitting, that wasn't necessarily my job. One of the reasons I was, this is going to sound very high and mighty, but one of the reasons I was highly sought after is because I did have more of a let's play outside aspect rather than I'm the babysitter, but here's a movie, go watch it. I really facilitated going outside, getting good energy, getting to play with kids your own age, getting to work along with us if we were working in the garden, getting to read with us if I was going to read a book, going to the library with us if I was going to the library. Like, when I said that they entered our home and into our family, I truly meant that. They were just going to do life with us here, and a lot of the parents really appreciated that. But it does disrupt the flow when they've already done school and we're starting school. Starting basically maybe more of our deeper discussion type things. So that was very difficult for a lot of these kids. And again, they do not know how to do well on their own. They've been integrated in the family, and now it's like, I've got to work on this. You're going to have to go play by yourself. That was extremely hard for them. And they did get better. Some of them that I worked with really did get better, but the majority, no. And I know all of this work I've put into, now that I've stopped, is going to be undone. Because it doesn't take much. And that's kind of unfortunate. But that is another thing that you have to think about. If you're pouring this time and effort into these children, you have to remember that at the end of the day, they go home to their house. You are not their parent. You can work on all of these things, but it's a lot harder because you have to go back and work on them again, and work on them again, and work on them again, knowing that what you're doing is not going to necessarily change and be solid for them after this. It's just not. You're not their parent. And there was definitely a lot more respect of what our teachers have to go through in this session, or in this season of life that I was working through. Yeah. But when your time is not your own, it does affect things for family time. We could not do a lot of things because I would be like, it's going to run into the time that I have to pick up the kid from school. Or I won't make it back home, and then if somebody has to pick them up and drop them off at my house, which has happened sometimes, there would be times when I didn't have a vehicle and I would have to try to arrange a grandpa or something to drop them off at my house. I could not make anything work, and everything, especially with the homeschool communities, would start at the time that I was like, we'll be there 15 minutes and then we have to leave. It's not worth going. So there was that aspect of it's not going to work for us. Whether or not it's being picked up from school, or a time when mom needs to drop them off, or a time mom's going to pick them up, or anything. There's just a lot involved that just doesn't work. There was just a lot of conflict there. I think because you see daycare numbers, um, one friend of mine sent me one and it's like, wouldn't it be nice to make this much money? It was like $750 a month for daycare. The highest I ever made was $20 a day to have an infant, which means a lot more extra work. Lots of feeding, diaper changing, working with physical care was $20 a day. That was state paid, which means it was a foster baby. The state paid me $20 a day, and I babysat him up to 7 hours. You're not going to get paid a lot. Yes, it is helpful money, but especially in that instance of the infant, it does add a lot extra into it. He was brought food. The other kid that I had, him and sometimes the sister, the payout was the same. She could not do any more. She just could not afford anymore, which is why she had me. Was $15 a day. Up to 2 kids. I provided the meals. I provided the food. Because her solution then was, I'll just feed him when I get home. I'm not having a kid here 6 hours without eating. You're not going to get paid a lot. It does help the budget. It does when you need a little bit extra. It's, again, one more kid into your family. It also didn't cover gas. $15 a day. So I still had to go pick up the kid from school. Did not cover it. I think there is a pressure on homemakers. It's a new thing out there. I don't know how to describe it. Pressure. That we need to have some kind of income with our name. Whether it's just a little bit or not. I think we completely underestimate the homemaker and the amount of money that she saves being at home and taking care of her family. And her full role in that is considered a cost that cannot be calculated. The chauffeur, the nurse, the cook, the organizer, the home CEO. And there's a lot of pressure for women to bring in something to the home. There is another cost to that needs to be calculated into it. And sometimes you just have to. You have to pull the bootstraps on and do it. But I don't think that it's absolutely necessary if your family is doing fine, if you guys have a good rhythm, if all of your bills are able to be met, if living with what you have from what your husband can bring home is enough. That is a beautiful aspect to your home and life. And you don't have to add anything else to that to be validated in what you're doing. And it's unfortunate that we have such a high value with dollars and cents and not a high value in the work that the mom brings to the home. Wanted to end on this. I was trying to figure out how to put this in another video I had filmed, but I think that kind of opens this conversation that I've been wanting to make. Recently, I had a 18-month and a 6-month at my home, on top of 3 of my children. My oldest 2 both had work that day. And it was a gentle reminder to even me of just how much work little ones are. I could not hand off anything to my oldest to help me with. And I have raised up children to help me in this. I told you my oldest two were at work. The third one in the lineup, who is my 11-year-old, he was on his paper route. It was lunchtime. My fourth daughter, the 9-year-old, she loves babies. She loves to help. But there was also the aspect of her trying to finish her schoolwork. 6-year-old, I have to remember ages, it's a little bit difficult. My 6-year-old was playing with the kid I babysit. He's 5. And I had the 2 babies. And it was lunchtime. And the dishes had piled up because I had not gotten to them. It was lunchtime, dishes had piled up. The laundry was going in the background, but I had to make sure that I switched it. It was a warm day and I did not want clothing to sit in there. So the washer was going and my mind is thinking, don't forget the laundry in the washer because you do not want to redo that again. One baby's crying for his bottle. He's on a schedule, so that needs to be done. The other children are ready for lunch. Dishes are piled. There's toys on the floor. My brain is trying to think ahead of, okay, I need to remember that dinner is going to be tonight. And it was kind of a reminder of, oh man, it's been a while since my brain had to do this, and I was kind of just thrown into the middle. I was talking to a mom last night that I don't remember a lot of those younger days when I had 4 children, 6 and down. I've not had 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I had 13 months apart, a 3-year gap, and then 14 months apart, and then a 4-year gap, and then, a 3-year gap. Yes, both times they were 3-year gaps. So my oldest was 5, well, my fourth, and I know that was a very difficult season for me. I just know my 4th child was a big adjustment. But I don't remember exactly all the things that I did and how I made it work and how I made things work smoothly. I don't. I remember I had to quit dairy. I know I had to not do wheat. I never did wheat when I was nursing. I had to cut sugar out because sugar in me, especially nursing, is a nightmare. My thrush will go, my candida thrush issues go crazy, and nursing is like raising razors to you. So add all of that into it. Convenience meals just weren't going to happen. That day when I had those kids and trying to balance everything, it was a reminder as to how important it is to just put your time and invest each moment into your family. I did have outside jobs at that point. But I don't even remember that. But I know that those years were a lot easier in some sense with raising my family than they are today. It doesn't seem like it, but in a sense it is. The questions that arise at that moment in time are more like, what are we going to have for dinner? How do you treat one another? And questions today are, why is the world this way? What if I want to do this and you don't think it's right? In some sense, it is easier. I don't say that to diminish your work here, because those were some hard years, and like I said, I don't remember what I did. I was in the survival mode. I was doing what I had to do each day to take care of my family and get through another day. Unless your family can't meet its bills, I don't know that I would encourage mothers out there that are in those trenches to get any additional work right now. I would look at what I could do to reduce the cost of living in our own home first, and then make it my ambition to live as simply as I could and live with my husband's income. And that's hard. I had 2 children during the recession of 2008, and that was hard. I remember a lot of that. And I would say that it's just as hard now, if not harder. But it is definitely something to really think about before you add to your plate anything extra. I think people assume that being home means that we're lazy. No. If anybody is like me, and I know I'm not the only one, from the time my eyes open to way past the time when my eyelids finally close, there is a constant list of what needs to be done and what needs to be scheduled and what needs to be addressed and how things need to be taken care of and cards that need to be mailed and phone calls that need to be made. That list is constantly in our heads. We are not leaving the house for 8 hours and coming back to how we left it. We are living there every day. And it is a home that is, it's a home that is lived in, which means that it needs constant taking care of, on top of constant living, on top of everyone else that needs a little piece of you, whether it's family, friend, relative, neighbor. Really think about it before you add more to your plate. And think about some of the things that I've addressed here. If somebody else's family dynamic is different than yours, are you willing to open your door daily to that? Another thing that we've noticed, a friend of mine and I have noticed, is that not only, you have to be very selective in who comes in your house, but not only that, even if somebody has certain similar values to you, it doesn't mean that all of their values are the same. And there are a lot of children these days under the age of 6 that have phones, and they will bring them to your house. And you can have the rule no electronics and put it up. But if the parent wants to be able to get a hold of that child and the kid wants their item, that becomes a difficult thing, and you have to kind of figure out how that's going to work in your house. So these are some things to think about. These are some things to contemplate. Definitely there are blessings, and sometimes you have the most wonderful family put into your lap. That little foster boy that I have, I'm so glad when I get to watch him. He's definitely a part of our family. And to a certain extent, all the little ones that I have watched over the years. But at the end of the day, they go home. Your children are already there. What did they miss out when you have poured so much into something else? I think that's something very much to consider. I'll see you in the next video.